The National Enquirer has been given immunity in the investigation of illegal campaign contributions for the Trump campaign. Now, the National Enquirer assisted Donald Trump and Michael Cohen in killing a story involving one of Trump's alleged mistresses. Now, with that said, an ex-National Enquirer editor was on Ari Melber's show on MSNBC to talk about his experiences when he was working for the tabloid. And he had some pretty interesting things to say. Let's take a look at the first part.
Do you have reason to believe Mr. Pecker knew other incriminating things about Trump that have not come out?
Yes, certainly.
Do you know what any of those are?
I know some of them. And there are stories involving, of course, the Trump Kushner family. There are stories of sibling rivaling with the children, backbiting, discord with his wife.
Would you describe them, because obviously we're talking about things that haven't come out and we obviously haven't verified them, but would you characterize them as merely embarrassing, if you will, or do any of them arise to the level of being potentially criminal?
Well, actually both. I mean, they're certainly embarrassing. And then when you get involved with, the actions of his children, including his daughter and son-in-law, we're getting closer to criminal activity.
Whoa, okay, that came out of nowhere. So this story has a hilarious component as well, which we're gonna get to in a little bit. But why in particular Jared and Ivanka on the criminal activity as opposed to Donald Trump? We already know the criminal activity related to Donald Trump in the National Enquirer. They paid the hush money for him, which is an illegal campaign contribution. And he is potentially a co-conspirator in that felony. And that's certainly what the prosecutors seem to indicate in what they have made public so far. They don't list his name, they call him individual one, but it's obviously Donald Trump. But Ivanka and Jared, so let's listen a little bit more here, and then I'm gonna tell you what we think he might be referring to, which also relates to the hilarious part. So let's watch the second clip.
And when you say another shoe to drop, can you give us any more insight on what you're talking about?
I think there's, I think the special that they racked last winter is particularly curious. It was racked at Walmart. It was a glossy. It had the cover of the. It had a picture of the prince on the cover. There were pictures of President Trump inside.
The prince
and it seemingly came out of left field. It wasn't the typical American media product.
Which prince?
MBS.
And so you're talking about your belief that there may be some other financial incentive for some of that coverage?
I certainly do.
And do you have, I have to ask this, do you have any specific evidence of that, or that's just what folks are talking about that you know at AMI?
It smells fishy. In addition to shortly after that cover was racked, American media, which is basically a cash poor company, somehow came up with the funding to buy up their competitors from the Bauer organization.
Okay, so what is he referring to? And when we looked into it, because I'm sorry that I'd missed this at the time, because it is glaring. The company that makes the National Enquirer put out a magazine called The New Kingdom, and it's 100 pages, no ads, and all it does is tell you how awesome Mohammed bin Salman is and how great the Saudi kingdom is. In fact, in it they call it the Magic Kingdom. As if it's Disneyland.
Yeah, they Disneyfy it.
Yeah.
But one other thing that I want to mention quickly is you're right. All it is like a glowing magazine about Mohammed bin Salman. It refers to Saudi Arabia as our closest Middle East ally, destroying terrorism.
That's, of course, as usual, not the ally part, but destroying terrorism is the exact opposite. They have funded terrorism throughout the world. Okay, now let's get to some of the funny parts before we get to why. Why on God's green earth is this happening? They mention what Anna said. They call it the Magic Kingdom. And then they have all this glowing stuff. They say Mohammed bin Salman is controlling a staggering $4 trillion business empire. He's building a $640 billion sci-fi city of the future. And that his main goal is, I swear to you, I'm not kidding, quote, spreading happiness. I mean, Spreading Body Parts is more like it, but that's this insane magazine that was put out. They said his economic diversification isn't just about protecting the rich elite. Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, is all about the poor and the middle class. Hilarious. He's turning Saudi Arabia into a, quote, a global investment powerhouse, a tech hub. And get this, the city he's going to build is a, quote, utopian city, the likes of which the world has never seen. I mean, it is one absurdity after another after another. And they were charging $13.99 for this and printed 200,000 copies. Who the hell would buy that, right? No, it's obvious. It's literally the most obvious propaganda piece I have ever seen in my life. And so, of course, there's not a single critical thing of him. And interestingly enough, it's not just pictures of Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, and they also like go nuts about how awesome the country of Saudi Arabia is. They talk about their falcon hunting and their horse racing, and they talk about their vegetation and animals and how wonderful this place is. So then they asked the American Media Incorporated back then when it first came out, they're like, so no one paid you guys for this? You just decided that maybe Americans will gobble this up and it'll be a great selling magazine? They're like, yeah, that's right. Nobody paid for it at all. It's not at all propaganda. No, we just thought it'd be a bestseller.
No, and let me add again, emphasize what you said earlier. There were no ads in this magazine, which means they didn't make, well,
if anyone bought it for
publicly,
$14,
right?
Okay,
well,
yeah. I can't imagine anyone did.
But there was no ad space in the magazine. So
that's right.
What was their incentive? There had to have been an incentive in publishing this.
Of course. I mean, look, I will guarantee it to you. I'll bet any amount of money that that the Saudis and or the Trump organization, people involved in the Trump organization, paid for this. Of course they did. So why the Trump organization? How are they connected? First of all, David Pecker, who runs National Enquirer, is friends with Donald Trump. He does propaganda for him all the time, not just on the hush money, which he has now admitted on the mistresses, covering up all of his affairs, but he did positive propaganda for Donald Trump throughout his career, and then during the campaign, he did negative stories about his opponents. Ted Cruz's dad killed JFK, and Ted Cruz had 5 mistresses, which might be even more absurd than the Saudi piece, right? So that's the connection to the Trumps, but also the person who is featured the second most in this magazine, number 1 is Mohammed bin Salman. Second is Donald Trump. And Salman is quoted as saying Donald Trump is a president who will bring America back on the right track. And so obviously AMI got paid for it. Now it doesn't matter what the speculation is because David Pecker has turned evidence. So he has already told prosecutors, very, very likely, this is a second case about who paid for this magazine in the second case. And if it turns out that people of the Trump organization coordinated payments to National Enquirer and funneled money from Saudi Arabia, well, that's collusion number 2. So look, it's not, if Trump was a private citizen and he's just brokering this weird business deal, that's his business, right? But is there something connected to politics here when they're supposed to be serving the people of the United States of America, but instead they're serving a foreign country? And did they get something in return? So that's why the former editor of the National Enquirer, the guy you just saw, saying, hey, they should look at Ivanka and Jared Kushner, meaning they might have arranged this deal. And did they get something financial in return from the Saudis? Woo, that's bad news for the Trump administration and for Trump himself. Because the one way that I've been telling you from literally day 1 that he resigns is they say, Donald, we got you and Ivanka. What are you gonna do now? So
in the end of what Jared George said, Jared George is the former editor at the National Enquirer, he said something about a media acquisition between the National Enquirer, AMI, and something else. So it could be, money or some sort of funding that they've received for creating this magazine in order to help with that acquisition. I don't know, but it appears that he knows something. And it's not really our job or anyone's job other than investigators to look into it to see if there were any crimes committed in any type of deal here.
MAGA guys, just hold your powder dry on your lies and absurd defenses here. Because remember, Pecker already turned in the evidence. You're gonna be proven wrong, in a matter of time.
They don't care.
So I know, but I can picture them now in their stupid ass red hats, like, no, the Crown Prince is a great guy. He said that the National Enquirer and Donald Trump, they did a wonderful job in promoting this Muslim fundamentalist dictator who chops up people. It was a hot seller. That's why they did it. You know what the National Enquirer claimed at the time? They're like, what? It was a feature like we'd done on Elvis and the Beatles.
Oh. Come on.
So, all right, good luck to you, brothers. But looks like, again, the Trump family is in a world of trouble. Tick, 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 tick.
I was just about to say.
Tick, 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 tick.
Yeah.
Oh, Ivanka. Orange might look good on her.
Oh, it's so your color. Oh my God.
Well, it might be soon. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcasts.